Is McCartney Green, also known as Susan Milner, and welcome to Chapter 8 of D&D Number 1, A Healing in Jesus' Name. They arrived at an exclusive restaurant in the heart of Daytona, and as they entered, heads turned and people nodded, smiled, and pointed in their direction. "Do you always cause such a commotion everywhere you go?" Shelley whispered to Ricky. "Huh, I believe it's you they're all gawking at," Eric answered. "Oh, please," Shelley returned, but admitted that the elegance and ambiance of the restaurant did make her feel like a real-life Cinderella. After being seated, the waiter brought a wine list. Eric glanced over at Shelley. "How about some champagne?" "Champagne? Oh, well, I don't usually drink. And actually, I didn't know that you did." He smiled. "Well, I don't very often, but tonight is a celebration of sorts." "Oh, what are we celebrating?" "You." Me? It's a little premature, don't you think?" "We're celebrating your very first sparring tournament. We've come a long way." "You've come a long way, and I'm proud of you. More importantly, I hope you're proud of yourself." "Well, I'll wait until after the tournament before I let myself feel pride." He shook his head. "Like I said, you've come a long way. And we'll talk about the results of the tournament after the tournament. So, would you like some champagne?" "Oh, I'm not sure. I've never had any. Actually, I don't really like the taste of alcohol." "Okay, well, you can try it, and if you don't like it, that's fine. Mind you, this is only one time. Tomorrow, we go right back to training." Shelley nodded in agreement. Eric ordered the drink along with appetizers and their food, winking at Shelley when he spoke French. While they waited, he and Shelley chatted about the coming tournament. Shelley noticed Ricky's abnormal silence. "Well, you're awfully quiet, Ricky. You must be tired." He grinned. "Nope. I was just watching you two." "Watching us what?" Ricky shrugged. "I can't pinpoint it yet." He quickly changed the subject. "I'm starved. Anyone else hungry?" As if on cue, the waiter appeared at their table with shrimp and oysters and stuffed mushrooms and champagne on ice. Eric poured, and Shelley hesitantly tried a sip, wrinkling her nose at the bubbles. The men watched her with delight. She made a sour face. "I guess it's okay," she said, not wanting to disappoint them. She continued to sip, trying to get used to the taste as Eric served her appetizers, and Ricky dove in. While Ricky inhaled food, Eric and Shelley talked about what to expect during the coming week. A few courses into the meal, Shelley excused herself and both men watched her leave. Ricky shook his head. "Well, if she fights anywhere near as good as she looks, you have a winner, Dad." Eric nodded in agreement. "Well, she doesn't yet, but she will." "How are things holding up on the financial end?" Ricky asked. "Well, I've had some donations, but a lot will depend on the outcome of this tournament, because the sponsors will be here to watch. If they like what they see, then we're in business." "Well, they'll like what they see, unless they're blind. Either way, though, there's no problem because you've always got me, and you have to know what's mine is yours. I'll back her completely." Eric patted Ricky's hand and smiled. Well, there was no need for words to let Ricky know what a fine young man Eric thought him to be. He appreciated the offer, but he was not lacking in funds if it came down to it. However, Ricky's generosity and loyalty were duly noted. "So, Dad," Ricky began anew, "let's get serious a minute. And tell me, how long have you been in love with Shelley?" Eric almost choked on his champagne. He looked at Ricky incredulously. His son wore a sly smile. At first, he thought he'd deny it, if only to keep his own feelings in check, but he realized he'd never be able to be anything but truthful with Ricky. He sighed and he shrugged. "I think I fell in love the moment I laid eyes on her at the tournament in Atlanta. And every day the feelings grow stronger." He shook his head. "But it really makes no difference what I feel for her." "No difference? What are you talking about? You're in love with this woman. Heck, I'm in love with her. Dad, there hasn't been anyone in your life since Mom. How can you say it makes no difference?" Eric eyed him calmly. "Well, I say it because it's extremely important for me to maintain a strict master-student relationship with Shelley. Ricky broke in. Oh, you've already failed there. Even I can see that. Eric frowned. As I was saying, I've made her a promise to prepare her for the mart, and I won't break it. I can't do anything that might distract her or cause her to think about anything else. Ricky sat regarding his father for several moments, and finally he spoke. Dad, that is such bull. The mart is nothing compared to finding someone you truly love. Haven't you always taught me to put my competitions in perspective, make sure my priorities stay straight? Well, maybe you should take your own advice. Well, I'm not doing this for me, Rick. The mart is what she wants, and I intend to give it to her. Well, don't be so noble that you screw up and lose her. You don't understand, Rick. I believe it was her destiny to become my student for the mart, and I have to see it through. Okay, I can buy that. But have you thought that maybe it was her destiny to become your student just so you could find each other and the mart was only a means to an end? Eric sat gazing at his young son and wondered when he'd become so wise. Yet Eric had no response because in his heart he knew Ricky could be right. Shelley showed up in just the nick of time, saving Eric from the conversation, and both men stood as she arrived. Eric noticed her pale face and was immediately concerned. Shelley, are you all right? She raised her fingers to her temple. I just have a little headache, that's all. I'll be fine. The meal progressed, and the evening turned out to be delightful. The food was exquisite, the service great, the company wonderfully entertaining. Shelley giggled at their stories, feeling more and more uninhibited with each sip of the champagne. She even told some of her own adventures. Eric watched her sigh in contentment. Here I am, eating food I've never heard of, sipping champagne, orchestra playing, beautiful music, and flanked by two gorgeous men. I feel as if I'm in a dream world. She closed her eyes and hummed to the music, and Ricky broke her trance by asking her to dance. Eric watched them as they moved onto the dance floor. Shelley moved gracefully, another facet to the diamond, Eric thought. So, Ricky said softly into her ear, I have a question for you. Shelley smiled and nodded. What is it you'd like to know? Ricky smiled. How long have you been in love with my dad? Shelley pulled back and looked up into Ricky's face. His words had taken her by surprise. She opened her mouth to repudiate his assumption, but he spoke again before she could. Don't even try to deny it. Is it that obvious? She asked. Well, the vibes you guys are sending out are pretty strong. Shelley sighed and then frowned. Your father is the most wonderful man I've ever known. You say that like it's a bad thing. Oh, you don't understand. I don't want to feel this way. I'm just beginning to find myself. Well, I'd rather not get into it, but there are personal reasons. She put her hand to her head. I don't know why my tongue is so loose. Please don't tell him what I said. All I know is, for the last 5 weeks, I wake up thankful every day that all the women he could have chosen for the mart, it was me. Ricky was taken by her sincerity and honesty and understood completely why these two had found each other, or even more accurate, why God had brought them together. Well, do you intend to tell him how you feel? Ricky asked her. She shook her head. Oh, goodness, no. It's all I can do, just trying to be a good student. He frowned. You're as bad as him. Shelley didn't get to ask him what he meant because Eric's strong hand grasped Ricky's shoulder. All right, you two, break it up. It's my turn. Eric stepped in and pulled her close. Speaking with Ricky about her feelings made Shelley admit how good it felt to have Eric's strong arms around her, to be close to him, to feel his breath in her hair. No, she didn't want to feel this way. She didn't want to need him. She didn't want to need any man. Yet she was afraid it was already too late. She moved closer to him, breathed in his scent. Maybe it was time to fill that void in her life. Eric spun Shelley around and she looked up at him with starry eyes. What? He asked with a smile. Oh, this night doesn't even seem real. She sighed with pleasure, though even as she spoke, the pain in her head was growing. It seemed the dizziness would overtake her if not for Eric holding her close, and she leaned her head on his chest for support. Eric thought about her words. It doesn't seem real. Maybe because the reality was something he didn't wish to face. Still, at this moment, the reality was, it felt wonderful to have her in his arms. He was tempted to confess his love for her. Certainly they were mature enough to continue her training regardless. Just the thought of telling her what he felt made his heart swell and his pulse quicken. "Shelley," he began, whispering her name softly. She looked up at him, but she was no longer smiling. There was panic in her eyes. "Something's wrong," she said. Eric stopped. He felt her body go limp briefly before she caught herself again. Moving quickly, he helped her off the dance floor. I'll get the car," Ricky offered immediately. The waiter showed up to see what he could do. Eric signed the check and helped Shelley to the car. Lying her down in the back seat, he climbed in next to her and peered down into her face, his eyes full of worry. "Tell me exactly what the problem is," he commanded kindly. I don't know what's wrong. I'm dizzy, and this headache. It feels sort of like a buzzing in my head. I am so dizzy, like I'm spinning around. I've never felt like this before." Ricky suddenly laughed out loud. "You find this amusing?" Eric questioned. "Dad, I think I know what's wrong with her," Ricky chuckled from his place behind the wheel. "Well, son, by all means, fill us in." "I believe she's describing the symptoms of intoxication." Eric looked down at her with a smile. "Of course, it's the champagne." He rubbed the back of his knuckles over her forehead, relieved that it wasn't something worse. "You're going to be okay." She smiled warily. "I'm drunk?" "Ever so slightly." "Oh, I'm sorry, Eric. Again, I ruined everything." "Ruined it," Ricky chimed. "Dramatically rescuing a gorgeous woman is the perfect end to a perfect day in any movie." Back at the hotel, Eric waited in Shelley's room until she came out of the bathroom to make sure she was okay. He took her hand. "Get some sleep. You'll feel better in the morning," he assured her. "We're running at 7 on the beach." "That gives you 8 hours to sleep it off, or were you hoping to use this as an excuse to get out of a training day?" "Go away," she mumbled. "Fine," he said. "Then I'll see you at 7. You know, 7? Ever heard of it?" She stuck out her tongue, and he laughed and left her room. Closing her door softly, he turned and leaned against it. He'd come so close to telling her how he felt. Her sudden reaction to alcohol had prevented him from spilling his guts. He shook his head. Maybe it was a sign. Maybe it was for the best, he thought resolutely. "How's she doing?" Ricky asked as Eric came through the door of their suite. "She'll survive," he answered, ripping off his tie and unbuttoning his shirt. It had been a very long and very nice day, and both men were tired. And even though Ricky hadn't complained, Eric knew his son could have. After all, he'd flown in from L.A. to Atlanta long before Eric and Shelley's day had begun. They took a few minutes to pray together, and both slept hard and awoke refreshed to a beautiful summer morning. New scene. Excuse me. Eric looked Shelley over when she opened her door the next morning. Her sweats, cut off to shorts, paired with a simple sports tank top, was a large contrast to how sophisticated she looked the night before, and was every bit as appealing. They walked down to the beach in silence, the breeze blowing fresh salt air in their faces. Seagulls fussed at each other in the early morning fight for food. The sun was still very low in the sky, giving the water a steely gray hue. Shelley stretched her arms over her head and breathed deeply. "You know, I've only seen the ocean 2 times in my whole life." "You're kidding me," Ricky exclaimed. "No, really. So every time I look out over the water, it like takes my breath away. It's so big, and it feels like so powerful. I'm in awe of it." "Well, I think I've missed the ocean most of all over these past few weeks," Eric answered. "Oh, thanks, Dad." Eric chuckled. "Well, other than you, of course." "Yeah, right." Shelley laughed. "Is your home close to the ocean?" "The ocean is our backyard. Ricky and I have a morning ritual of a family prayer and meditation with the sun rising over the ocean. Then we run or train on the beach. In the evening, we like to go down and do forms or some tai chi. The sight and sound of the surf, it energizes me. It's as if I can feel the life force of its power, the source of its power, which is God. Eric smiled as he glanced out over the sea. Ricky nodded in agreement. Yeah, it's cool. Totally cool. It sounds amazing, Shelley agreed. They took time to stretch before Ricky tugged on Shelley's braid. Come on, let's go. With the tide out there, sorry, with the tide out, there was plenty of room on the flat. Goodness, so sorry. With the tide out, there was plenty of room on the flat, wet sand for the three of them to run abreast. Even at the height of the summer season, the morning belonged only to a few early risers. Some children scavenged for shells, and an old couple walked hand in hand. The trio ran silently down the mostly deserted beach. Ricky teased Shelley about having to slow his pace in order to stay with her, and she assured him that they didn't have to stay with her at all. Go on ahead, Rick, and we'll catch you later, Eric urged. Oh, I'm not running ahead without you. It's no fun if I can't show you up sometimes. Right. You know, I'm thinking it's time I put you in your place. All I know is, Dad, if we go any slower, we'll be running backward, Ricky teased. Breathing hard, Shelley finally came to a halt. Hands on knees, she tried to catch her breath. I'm sorry, Eric, she panted. I can't make it. I think I'm still feeling the effects of last night. Well, it's possible. Are you dizzy? I just can't seem to catch my breath. Not enough oxygen in the blood. Sounds like you're dehydrated. You did drink your water this morning, right? She grimaced. Well, no. I felt a little nauseated, so I went without. He shook his head at her. Okay, don't say it. I messed up. I'm sorry. Listen, I've been holding you two up. Why don't you run on ahead and show Ricky who's fastest while I rest a bit? Oh, ho, Ricky crowed. Yes, Daddy dear. Come show me just how fast you are. Eric touched her shoulder. You'll be okay? I'm fine. Go. You're making me feel guilty for holding you up. Okay, 'cause I really need to teach this kid a lesson. Eric patted his cell phone. If we get out of shouting distance, call me if you need me. Shelley nodded and watched as they took off. She smiled as Ricky took the lead. Walking slowly, she took large, deep breaths, trying to slow her heart rate. She hadn't gone 20 yards before she became aware of a ruckus between some kids at a nearby picnic area. I'm sorry, I just had to look out the window for a minute because the gaggle of geese that keep showing up at my house every morning are back. I don't know if you can hear them. Just walking around in the yard. All right, sorry. Let's see. She hadn't gone 20 yards before she became aware of a ruckus between some kids at a nearby picnic area. And since the commotion involved a young teenage girl, perhaps a little younger than her own daughter, Shelley couldn't help being a little nosy. One of the boys was pawing at the girl. Stop, Bobby, the girl shouted as she pushed the boy away. She was the only girl in the group, Shelley noted. Beer cans and blankets littered the sand where they stood, and she figured the four kids had probably been there all night. Don't tell me to stop, Bobby smirked at her. He pulled her close to him, but the girl pushed him away again. You don't own me, Bobby. I said I have to go home, and besides, you smell awful. Now let me go. Shelley shook her head at the teens and turned to walk away, deciding to mind her own business. But what she heard next stopped her in her tracks. Oh, come on, Bobby, let us have some of her, one of the boys sneered while the others voiced their agreement. What are friends for, man? It's not funny, the girl said, wrenching her arm from his grip, and Bobby yanked her back. Who says we're kidding? Shelley tried to look into the boy's face to see if he was serious. She couldn't get a read, and worriedly she peered down the beach to see if she could spot Eric and Ricky. One of the boys approached the girl and grabbed her roughly and pulled her close. Oh, come on, don't be a tease. Give me a little something. Stop, she yelled, and then stomped on his toe. He cried out in pain, and he slapped the girl, knocking her to the ground. The slap startled Shelley. She thought for sure there would be a scuffle now between the boy named Bobby and the one who just hit his girlfriend, but instead they crowded around, laughing and jeering. Surely that guy wouldn't hurt his own girlfriend, Shelley thought. And he'll stop the others in just a moment. They're only bluffing. Shelley tried to walk away again, only she could hear that they weren't stopping. She wanted to cover her ears and just make the whole scene go away. But the girl, who'd at first been angry, now seemed panicked, maybe even scared. Shelley could feel that fear in her own heart. There was a time she'd done nothing, and she'd vowed that would never happen again. Running up the beach a few steps, she realized she'd never catch up to Eric and Ricky. Squinting her eyes, she could see they were walking toward her, or were they? She pulled out her phone and texted, "Need help now." Nervously, she looked back up at the kids to see if she was making a big deal about nothing, but the boys were pulling at the girl and trying to kiss her, and she was struggling to get away. Shelley hit the send button. She jumped up and down, waving her arms, and they started running. Shelley nervously watched their progress, turning back and forth between them and the girl, who was now crying. One of the boys was on top of her. Shelley couldn't wait any longer. Swallowing her fear, she charged over to where the helpless young girl wrestled in the sand with a boy twice her size. "Okay, guys," Shelley said, trying to sound commanding. "You've had your fun now, and you need to leave her alone." She got their attention immediately. The astonished boys all turned toward Shelley, eyed her up and down, and grinned. "I'm not kidding around. Now let her go," Shelley demanded. The boys were hardly intimidated. "I think the lady wants to join the party," the one called Bobby said, eyeing her coolly. The girl scooted away as the boys focused all their attention on Shelley. Shelley swallowed hard, reaching the very late conclusion that she'd definitely gotten in over her head. She drew a deep breath, trying to calm herself and keep her voice from trembling. "Don't be ridiculous. I'm old enough to be your mother." "Well, that makes you a MILF," Bobby answered. Shelley had no idea what that meant, and now that she was getting a closer look at the boys, she realized that their pupils were dilated and darting back and forth. They seemed to be high on something. No wonder they lacked reason and judgment. And with that thought came the realization that she'd just stirred a hornet's nest. One of the boys grabbed Shelley by the arm and tried to pull her to him. "Me first." She reacted quickly. Twisting her arm out of his grasp, she spun and instinctively kicked full force, landing a spinning back kick to the ribs, and the boy went sprawling across the sand. He got to his feet. I don't know who you think you are, but you just messed up." He cocked his fist and swung, and she ducked and found herself automatically delivering 2 punches in return, one to the stomach and one to the cheek. The feeling that took her over was a surprise to Shelley. It actually felt good to take action. She didn't freeze. She didn't cower or run. She instinctively fought back. Pleased with herself, she couldn't help but smile, thinking that Eric would be proud. Bobby laughed at his friend. "Man, she made you look bad." Then Shelley realized she was congratulating herself too soon. Before she could stop him, the third boy grabbed her from behind, locking her arms against her sides. Taken by surprise and overpowered, she struggled to remember what she should do, but her mind went blank. Wiggling and kicking in an effort to free herself, her foot accidentally connected with Bobby's chin. Infuriated, Bobby towered over her while the other two held her. Bobby's chin was bleeding, and it was clear that he meant to seek revenge. He may be just a kid, but he was big and strong and obviously not thinking straight. He struck out hard and fast, so fast it surprised her. He backhanded her, his knuckles catching her mouth. Shelley's knees buckled. She would have fallen to the ground had the two boys not held her fast, and the force of the slap dazed her. She licked at a small trickle of blood that ran from her lower lip as her mind raced. "Oh, Lord, what have I done? I'm in trouble now. Didn't Eric get my text? I know I saw them head back. At least I thought I did. But maybe they weren't headed toward me. Maybe it was an optical illusion." And then he was there. Eric's calm voice seemed to come out of nowhere. "Let her go, boys." The young men dropped their hold immediately. The trio whirled to face the man who'd spoken. Dazed, Shelley turned to see Eric and Ricky standing side by side. Eric grabbed Shelley and shoved her behind him. She'd never seen Eric fight. She quickly discovered that his skills were very real and very lethal. Two of the boys tried to jump Eric, one from behind, but Eric moved so fast. He merely dodged or blocked everything the boys tried to do. He threw no punches. It seemed obvious that he was being very careful to not hurt the boys, whom she assumed were minors. In only a few seconds, he had both boys pinned in the sand. With his knee held to the back of one boy, Eric offered a choice. We can do the cops and parents thing, or we can work this out calmly. Choose now, Eric warned. Okay, the boys cried. Eric released his hold. Sit right there. Oh, yeah. Shelley turned to see Ricky mercilessly playing with his foe, who currently was Bobby. The boy was coming at him with everything he had, yet Ricky was jumping around, easily blocking punches and making crazy and silly Bruce Lee sounds. Again, it was obvious that he was trying very hard to not hurt the kid. Shelley giggled at Ricky's antics. Ricky paused to look over at Eric with a grin, but Eric wasn't smiling. He rolled his eyes at his son. Ricky shrugged his apology. Bobby took that moment to run at him, and Ricky immediately flipped the guy onto his back. Bobby moaned and sat up slowly. Eric frowned, and Ricky smiled at his father. Don't worry, he's okay. I went easy on him. Sighing, Eric went immediately to Shelley and took her by the shoulders. I'm okay, she offered before he had a chance to ask. But boy, am I really glad to see you. He used his thumb to wipe the blood from her mouth. Eric's teeth clenched hard, and Shelley saw something in his eyes that almost frightened her. What happened? Eric asked softly. Shelley quickly told the story, while at the same time the young girl knelt in the sand beside her boyfriend. Why'd you have to go and hurt him? She whined. He was just playing. He didn't mean it. Shelley's jaw dropped. It's classic, Eric muttered. He sighed, hoping this wasn't an omen to the forthcoming year. Rounding the boys and young lady up, he laid into them about making poor choices and the consequences of them. More sober now, the boys were only too happy that Shelley didn't intend to press charges. Seated on a rock, Shelley waited. Nearby, Ricky stood quietly watching his father, and he decided to let Shelley in on what he knew was about to happen. Shelley, I think you should know that Dad is, well, he's pretty angry. Yeah? I thought he was being so calm. Oh, Dad being calm in stressful situations is a bad sign. Oh, well, he shouldn't be mad at them. I'm okay, and really, those kids just weren't thinking very clearly. Well, actually, I don't think he's mad at them. He's mad at you, Ricky said, almost apologetically. Shelley glanced in Eric's direction. Me? Trust me, Shelley, I know when he's gonna blow, and he's gonna blow big time. But why? Her voice shook slightly, echoing her confusion and dread, because she hated it when Eric was angry. Well, I imagine it's because you put yourself in danger. Well, but, I mean, I had to help that girl, right? Ricky shrugged. Look, I'm not saying what you did was right or wrong. I'm just saying that he's really mad. She looked Ricky over. Huh, I guess you'd know, huh? I suppose you've faced his anger before. Oh, I'd say more than a few times, he said with a wistful smile. Her eyebrows rose, and her fearful, wide-eyed expression made Ricky feel sorry for her. So, what should I do? She asked. How should I handle him? Handle him? Ricky chuckled. You're kidding, right? She shrugged, and Ricky sighed. Okay. Look, the best thing to do is just be quiet and let him blow off steam. What I mean is, no matter what he says, you don't say anything. Just be quiet and let him get it all out. Shelley nodded in agreement just as Eric joined them. Come on, Eric ordered without slowing his pace. Shelley saw his eyes flash, and he realized Ricky was probably correct. Silently, they headed back toward the hotel, but they only got as far as a concrete picnic table when Eric stopped suddenly. You, he said, pointing at Shelley, have a seat. He pointed at the picnic table. Excuse me? She asked haughtily. Ricky shook his head because that wasn't exactly how he told her to handle him. Shelley gasped in surprise when Eric abruptly grabbed her around her waist and whisked her up onto the end of the picnic table. Shelley's startled expression made Eric remorseful. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you, but what I have to say won't last. And won't... Let me try that again. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you, but what I have to say won't wait. And just what is that? She demanded. Ricky cleared his throat to get her attention and raised his eyebrows. And remembering Ricky's tutorial, she pressed her lips together, lowered her head, and tried to look demure. Ricky stepped back and watched, bracing for the storm he knew was about to come. What in the hell did you think you were doing? Eric demanded, his voice no longer calm. Ricky's mouth fell open. He'd never in his 21 years heard his father use any kind of disrespectful language. Shelley only continued looking down at her feet and said nothing. Good girl, Ricky thought. Do you think now that you've been training for what, 5 whole weeks, that you're some kind of kung fu master? Are you out of your mind? What if there had been a knife or a gun? What if we had arrived just a few minutes later? What if we hadn't gotten your text? Are you aware of what was about to happen? Those kids were totally wasted. They were capable of anything. You could be hurt or worse. Damn it, Shelley, what were you thinking? What was going through your head? You put yourself in danger, and I know you can't be that stupid. Ricky noticed that last word had a noticeable effect on Shelley. Her demeanor changed. Sitting up straight, her chest puffed out, her chin jutted defiantly, and there was fire in her eyes. Uh-oh, Ricky mumbled. So? I'm waiting. Do you have anything to say for yourself? I'd really like to hear it. Speak, Eric demanded. Shelley gazed at Eric coldly for just a moment before she exploded right back at him. What the hell do you think I was supposed to do? Ricky had been surprised at his father's language, but when Shelley threw it right back at him, Ricky practically fell over laughing. And Shelley continued, her voice thick with sarcasm. I mean, maybe I should have gone over to the girl and told her flat out, I'm sorry, honey. I'd like to help, but I've only been studying self-defense for 5 weeks. If you wouldn't mind scheduling this altercation for a little later in the year, I'm sure I can be much more helpful. She paused only long enough to take a huge breath. Good grief. I didn't know what to do. I texted you and I thought that you were on your way. And in the meantime, they were hurting that little girl and she was crying and I just couldn't stand it. You tell me what good comes from studying martial arts if when the time comes, you can't use it to help someone. If I could have chosen when this little incident happened, I would have waited until I was ready to do things right. But it chose me, and I did what I thought I should. Heaven knows there was a time when I sure as hell wished someone had stepped in to help me. So what I did, Master Kino, may very well have been stupid like you say. But if so, then why don't you tell me, what was I supposed to do? They stood glaring at each other breathlessly. Time stood still as Eric digested Shelley's words. Dear God, she is so beautiful, he thought. And right, so right. Yes, she'd put herself in danger, and yes, she'd had no other choice, and yes, her lips were drawn up in an adorable pout, and no, there was no stopping what he was about to do. He needed her, he needed to taste her. Moving suddenly forward, he took her face in his hands and lowered his mouth to hers. Shelley's mouth opened in a gasp of surprise. The intimacy of the act had her heart tripping. She melted into him completely, forgetting that they were in public, that Ricky stood just feet away, observing. The world was only her and Eric. Her heart soared. Heat gathered in the pit of her stomach, and her mind went completely haywire. Hebrews Chapter 13, verse 14. Let marriage be held in honor among all, and let the marriage bed be undefiled, for God will judge the sexually immoral and adulterous. And that is the end of chapter 8. Da, da, da.